Squad Rep Bowman predicts civil war if GOP takes control in midterms. I do think that headline is a little strong.
Yeah.
What he actually said was, he went on to warn that Republicans gaining control of the House and or Senate would embolden dangerous and violent extremists to take further control. Quote, it would also embolden Republicans and the far right and white nationalists across the country to begin to believe that it is their time to not just take power in the House, but the Senate, the White House, and the state houses across the country. We've got to understand that this is a group that has been radicalized by the Great Replacement myth and many other things, and have been pushing for violence and pushing for even civil war. So that is what's at stake right now in terms of this election, he warned. I'd just like to point out that it's a ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
Republicans just did a deal on gun control. You don't see Republicans coming out and being like, could you imagine Mitch McConnell being like, I want a machine gun in the hand of every child? Like, they're nowhere close to anything like that. So to come out and say they're radicalized, but the funny thing is, what about winning an election makes him think they will then move for civil war? Like,
exactly. People revolt when they're losing in the political system. Winning in the political system emboldens a person to keep trying to pursue more victories within the political system.
You know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited about the Republicans getting into power and then sitting on their hands and doing absolutely nothing.
No, that's wrong. You are wrong, Luke.
Yeah,
they're not going to do nothing. They're going to capitulate to the Democrats and take away our rights.
I mean,
no, but you are right.
You are
right. I'm kidding.
They're trying everything. They're throwing everything at the wall and hoping that it sticks, from the Roe v. Wade to obviously this J6. They're trying everything they can to just throw it out there to radicalize their base. And I don't know. I feel like the J6 stuff is not going to stick with them, because I think a lot of people are watching this stuff and it doesn't add up. I mean, they have this show trial. Don't they have like an ABC producer putting the trial together or something?
It's
like
impossible to watch, man.
It's ridiculous. And people are watching this like, is this really a threat? Like, is this really the threat? Is this really is it going to be climate change? Is it going to be Roe v. Wade? What is it going to be, a police killing a bunch of black people? Like, they try everything. And I just hope a lot of people are waking up to, like, they just want to manipulate you and radicalize you.
You see Jake Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Jake Paul came out and was like, if you don't see why voting for Biden was the problem, you're the American problem.
And he's not like a right winger. And, Bowman's actually, whatever you think of him, he's a lot smarter than this. And he knows that he's actually stoking division when he goes this lane. Mm-hmm. He calls himself a progressive, so he understands the struggles of the working class. He should just be honest and say, hey, if the establishment Democrats continue in the way they are, we're losing the working class vote. People can't even afford gas, groceries. And Bowman knows that. He's a progressive, but he's kind of aligned himself with the establishment ever since he got into office, like the rest of the squad who voted for the $40 billion for Ukraine.
Yeah, so I want to make a point bouncing off that. I think you're absolutely correct there. And one thing I would add is it's interesting that someone who's part of the squad, which has very strong leanings, if not overt support for Marxist theory, would say that there's going to be a revolt in this country because the wrong political faction is winning, and not because, I don't know, gas is going to reach $8 a gallon because your average person is struggling to buy food because people are incapable of caring for their own family with a single wage.
That's the funny thing.
But he knows that. Like, the thing is, he's smart enough to... AOC, she knows that, but they decide not to talk about those issues. They have now aligned themselves with the establishment. And I mean, I think the funniest thing about the squad is they champion themselves like, oh, we're the outsider. We're going to go in there and we're going to fight Pelosi in the establishment left. And they've just literally aligned with them every single way.
Yep.
I think they might start leaning into the Civil War narrative, because the real issue is when people can't eat, when they can't drive, when they can't work. That's when you start seeing the breakdown. I forgot what it's called, but there's like an equation or whatever that when the cost of I think we talked about it before.
Yeah, we did.
When the cost of goods reaches a certain point to the value of labor, then the system breaks.
What's the quote? We're only 3 meals away from a revolution.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I forgot who said that. But someone will correct me in the comments section. The Jurassic World Dominion. That's who said it. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, that's when we saw the movie together, and that's why it just came to my mind right now.
Didn't invite me.
But we didn't. No.
3 meals away from a revolution. Is that what you said?
Exactly. And historically, we have to understand, whenever there's civil unrest, whenever there's a larger conflict, whether internal or external, it usually is fostered because of economic instability and chaos. This economic instability is being spurred on by deliberate decisions by the Biden administration that is literally shooting this economy in the foot. And this is going to prelude a larger conflict that's going to unfold in some kind of way, because history dictates that this is going to happen, because it always happens this way.
Come on, man. man.
Come on, man. I
That's
totally
the
agree.
direction.
Well, I think
You
there's-
agree with me?
Yeah, I know. I do agree. Every now and again, the man makes a good point. And you're completely correct. I would go a little bit further, too. I think there's something very unique about the present economic crisis we're facing, which is that people don't really have any ability to gauge what normal prices are, because during the pandemic, we actually saw a bit of deflation within key industries. So, for example, the cost of a gallon of gasoline where I was living was like $1.45. So if we had a relatively normal cost of gasoline back in 2020 and it was something around like $2.50, $3, and now it was up to $5, that would certainly be a problem. But when people are used to gas being significantly less expensive than the average, and then it shoots up over $5, you're going to see massive economic consequences of that, which you wouldn't otherwise see.
Well, it's like it's like an inverse big ask, right? So here, this is the Trump method, right? I think he writes about this in The Art of the Deal. I haven't read it, but the idea is ask for like twice of what you want. So I'd be like, Drew, give me $100 for this, drink, and then when you're like $100, that's crazy. I'll say, okay, 50, and you're like, 50, that's half. Even though 50 is, you ask for way more than you want. This is an inversion of that where people get used to a real. I'll put it this way: if you were in a place that had $1.50 for gas, and it jumps to $5. You're looking at a massive increase. If it was already $4 for like a year, you'd be angry and used to it. You'd be desensitized. So this is a much, much bigger shock to people.
And you'd be upset by it. Anyone's going to be upset by price increases, especially if their wages are not rising at an equivalent rate. But it's also the fact that people have sort of lost the ability to make calculations about what things should ordinarily cost, because nothing's really been at a normal price for about 2 years or so.
We got a lot of news in the economy, but let's stick to the Civil War topic because even Yahoo News released an article just moments ago, and it's titled "The Supreme Court Could Foster a New Kind of Civil War." So this is conversation that's being normalized. I was warning about this for a couple years now. It's called the divide and conquer agenda, and I think it's important to understand right now because from my perspective, there's a bunch of ruling elites manipulating the left and the right to fight each other on cultural issues, on issues that I would even regard as petty in some instances, while we are getting screwed and literally robbed of our wealth and money and potential to have any kind of legitimate future for our children. So I think, this term, Civil War, you've been talking about it forever, Tim. I think is something that we should discuss further because I think there's a big potential for this.
Well, I think we're in a new kind of civil war already. I've certainly talked about it. When you see the left go around destroying buildings in 2020, 5/29, never forget, the leftist insurrection at the White House, where they tried tearing down the fences, they tore down the barricades, set fire to a guard post, and they tried to raze St. John's Church, the famous President's Church. And 150 officers get injured in these protests. That was an insurrection. The president was forced into a bunker, and they laughed at him for it.
And how many federal agents and officers of the law were injured there?
150.
And Tim,
but here, my point real quick, sorry, is just that where's the hearings? Where are the arrests? Where's any Republican to come out and be like, look what happened here? Yeah, so when the federal government and law enforcement is only going after one group of people and the other faction is doing substantially more damage, yeah, okay, look. Some people say anarcho-tyranny, and I'm like, anarcho-tyranny is like criminals get away with it, but law-abiding citizens get arrested. This is something different. This is Antifa and far leftists go around smashing and destroying, and then the media and the government look away. And then you get a handful of like, what this Patriot Front group that no one believes is real anyway, and no one cares about, gets arrested for simply going into a city. They get a conspiracy charge. I mean, look, everybody thinks they're feds anyway, so I kind of thought it was funny. But if you're people in a truck and they surround you and arrest you just for that, I mean, you didn't do anything. We're already at a point where $2 billion in insurance damage, and it was probably more than that. Buildings destroyed, burned down all across this country, and nothing. 30 or so deaths related to this rioting, and nothing. I don't care. Look, arrest Patriot Front if they're doing something wrong, right? But what about literally the other factions that are doing substantially worse? Nothing is getting done.
Well, we definitely are in a political, psychological information war that you're seeing unfold through education, through the mainstream media, through movies, through Hollywood, through music, through CRT, through all of these agendas and teachings that come through all of these channels. And I think the bigger picture here is it's not necessarily left versus right. It's this global agenda from the top down. And I think the uniparty is nothing new, but I think a lot of people view it this way where it's like, it's left versus right in the United States. I think that's the way they want us to view it. They want us into a civil war. They want us attacking each other. So it gives this global elite an excuse for full government overreach. And the craziest part about this entire thing is people that believe they're on the right side, right? Which we would say like people on the left or whatever, right? People that think, the useful idiots that are on the ground, like Tim is talking about, the Antifa people, the BLM people, these far leftists, these Marxist professors and universities and you name it, right? These people think they're on the right side because they have the power in all these institutions, especially big tech. That's another one to name. They think they're on the right side, but you're literally being used just to push an agenda forward so that the bigger powers at B can come in and just have an excuse to take over everything. And anyone that's not in line at that point, doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. If you're not in line with the power structure or the agenda, you're gone.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest hurdles to the expansion of authoritarianism in this country is the Constitution. What's the easiest and fastest way to get rid of a Constitution?
Emergencies.
Civil
Chaos,
war.
yeah.
A civil war.
Chaos.
One side comes out on top and they just say, that's
Martial
gone.
law.
That's just gone. That's gone. Right. So we with Abraham Lincoln, right? The suspension of habeas corpus. I think they threatened to arrest the assembly in Maryland.
I think they arrested and killed people by the state for just simply disagreeing with the centralized government at that time.
Well, it's interesting. You were mentioning the fact that people have really been propagandized to accept a lot of these left-wing ideas. But even so, going back to Tim's comments about May 29th and the way that's treated as compared to January 6th, for as propagandized as this public has been, according to polling data, something like 2/3 of people would like to see an investigation into the 2020 riots, whereas less than half of American citizens polled want an investigation into January 6th. So even though it would be tremendously politically popular for the Republicans to look into the 2020 riots, I'm not going to hold my breath.
You know,
Well,
what's interesting
uniparty,
about the 2020 riots and being there covering on the ground, the majority of the businesses that were burnt down were black and brown owned,
Yeah.
immigrant owned. I was an intern for the Daily Caller, but my first night on the ground was actually 5/29, and I've never seen anything like that when they were attacking Secret Service. Now that night, I don't know if you guys remember, but I broke the story of, he was with Fox News at the time, Leland Vitterd. He was assaulted by those Black Lives Matter supporters. Now, could you imagine if it was CNN, Jim Acosta, and it was the other way around? I mean, they would never let us forget about it. I guarantee you, people don't even remember that Leland got assaulted because he works for Fox News. But if it was Jim Acosta, oh man, we wouldn't hear the end of it.
I'll take it a step further. BLM attacked CNN's headquarters in Atlanta.
That's right.
And
they
LA,
smashed out
and
the
LA.
windows.
And for all the rhetoric we've heard about how the media feels unsafe doing their job as honest brokers because people make memes of Donald Trump in a wrestling match punching a person with CNN's logo photoshopped over his face, when BLM attacks them and is literally rioting at their front doors and breaking into their building, it's, well, come on,
Mostly
this isn't that
peaceful.
big of a deal. It's mostly peaceful.
They were like, we it is fine. We understand.
Language
we
Dan
have-
heard.
Language of the unheard.
Yeah,
Yes,
remember that
yes.
most. He's like, they are mostly peaceful, and the police station's on fire behind them.
Yeah.
Iconic.
It was even iconic during the riots of like black business owners having to put signs saying this is black owned, like
Yeah.
don't burn me down. And I know, Drew, you remember this when we were in Kenosha, all the apartment buildings having to put signs saying, hey, kids live here, please don't burn it down. That was
They
the
did
most
it
scary.
again right before the trial, the Rittenhouse trial. When I went out there, I was driving down those same streets and the same signs were out there. There was like this senior citizen home that was like, hey, old people live here.
Yeah,
They
well,
don't
we
want to be burnt down. and
My
killed.
favorite was those college kids that were cheering on the BLM protest and were like, yeah,
Oh, then
go
they-
guys. And then they got a brick through the window. They're like, oh, we're with you. And they kept throwing more bricks. And I'm like, this is the true reality of the consequences that people don't realize that they had to deal with.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.